I think by now we all realize that Dame is pulling from literally anywhere. But how? He's not crazy strong. Doesn't do anything that unique. So what's behind it all? I'll break it all down to a science. So the most obvious quality of Dame's shot is that it's somewhat one motion. Comes to a bit of a halt near his set point, but for the most part his shot is just up and out, which maintains that momentum throughout that motion. And these one motion shots are generally more fit to shoot from longer ranges. And if you look at most players with these deep ranges, they're often going to be one motion shooters. Also, notice that the deeper he gets, the lower his set point is going to be. This is one of his closer shots, where his elbow is a bit higher. Now compare this to one of his deeper range shots, where that elbow is more bent and lower. In other words, that hand is closer to his shoulder. This gives him more range of motion for that elbow to extend and create power into that shot. Let's talk a little bit about his base. First is just ankle stiffness. When he's popping off the ground quickly into that shot, those heels rarely touch the ground. This maximizes the amount of stored energy that he's able to send up the chain into the release. Whereas if his heel were to touch the ground, it would limit this use of elastic energy. Also, notice that he gets into a slight turn with his feet. This is something essentially every great shooter does. There are some exceptions though, and it's to align the elbow with the bucket, because the elbow is naturally on one side of the body. So by slightly rotating, we're getting it lined up with the rim. To most players, it just feels more natural. In terms of the depth on his jump, on closer shots, Dame will get into a little bit more of a quarter squat, simply because he doesn't need as much power and it's quicker not to drop all the way down. But on these deeper shots, he's closer to a half squat at 90 degrees. Takes a little bit longer, but it's more power, so it's a good trade-off. Notice the slight internal rotation of the hips as he loads up the jump. This to many is labeled as knee valgus, but it's actually harmless and can be very beneficial to properly load the glutes, which are actually a diagonally oriented muscle and need a bit of internal rotation of the femur to activate properly. And this starts from the feet, which pronate or slightly turn inwards as he's loading up that jump. In terms of his timing, notice that his toes leave the ground right as the ball gets to his set point. If we break up his shot into two parts, that first part is the ball traveling upwards to his set point. As soon as it shifts paths and will begin to go out and up towards the rim using that extension of the elbow, that's the exact point where the toes are leaving the ground. And what this does is it maximizes force transfer from the lower body to the upper body, because the last bit of force is being put into the ground as the shot begins to be projected up into the air. Also, he never leaves any power from the wrist, which is basically like the foot or ankle in jumping. Try to jump without plantar flexing or extending your ankles. Probably won't get very high. Same thing on your jumper. If you don't snap that wrist powerfully, you're not going to get maximum range on that jumper, period. Most importantly, he doesn't change his shot drastically to be able to shoot from range. Yes, I mentioned some minor alterations, but for the most part, it's the same. And I think this is important to realize. If you have to change your shot drastically to shoot from further away, you shouldn't be shooting from there. You can work on optimizing your technique as well as getting stronger, but some players just aren't meant to shoot from too far away. Take a guy like Klay Thompson, for example, who's one of the best shooters ever, but his jumper doesn't really fit the mold of shooting with a ton of range, which is 100% okay. But some of these are very important keys as to why Dame and others are able to shoot from such a far distance away. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to stay tuned for a lot more. And follow my Instagram at byanymeansbasketball for more on this topic.